Hello, my dear friends. Glowing Star, thank you so much for being here today. Your time means the world to me. Before we begin, if you enjoy heartfelt, inspiring stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. Sparkling Heart, it's free. It helps me a lot, and it means we can share many more adventures together. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's journey. Wishing you a wonderful listening experience. Thank you for everything. And remember, this moment is yours. The boy's name was Adrian Cole. He was 10 years old, with dark brown hair that never stayed in place and a pair of wide, curious eyes that seemed to soak in every detail of the world around him. Adrian lived in a small, weather-worn farmhouse on the outskirts of a town most people forgot existed. His parents, Mark and Eleanor, worked from sunrise to sunset on the farm they rented, tending to cows, harvesting crops, and fixing whatever broke. Life was simple. Life was hard. Money barely stretched far enough to keep food on the table and clothes on their backs. There was no room for luxuries, no thought of vacations, no possibility of expensive hobbies. But Adrian had a dream, one so big it didn't fit inside the dusty walls of their farmhouse. He wanted to play the piano. The first time Adrian had heard one, he was 6 years old. His school class had been taken to a town hall for a cultural day. And there, in the middle of the stage, stood a black grand piano. A woman in a shimmering blue dress sat down, and when her fingers touched the keys, something magical happened. The sound was rich, alive, like a waterfall made of notes. Adrian's small heart had pounded in his chest. I want to do that, he thought. I want to make those sounds. But back at home, the dream seemed almost foolish. His family didn't even own a proper radio, let alone an instrument as grand and expensive as a piano. Still, the thought wouldn't leave him. He began sketching little keyboards in his school notebooks, memorizing the black and white pattern of the keys. At school, Adrian wasn't popular. His clothes were worn, his shoes patched. Other children noticed. Some were kind, most were not. They teased him about his farmer's smell, about the mud under his nails, about his quiet voice. They laughed when they saw him sitting alone at lunch, doodling pianos in the corner of his notebook. One boy, a tall kid named Ryan, used to tap him on the head and say, "Play us a song, piano boy." "Oh wait, you can't, you're too poor." Laughter would follow like a wave. Adrian never responded. He learned that if he stayed silent, the bullies got bored faster. But inside, the words left bruises. One evening, after another long day in the fields, Adrian found his mother in the kitchen, kneading bread. "Mama," he began cautiously, "if I wanted to learn something expensive, could I do it?" She smiled tiredly, flour dusting her cheeks. "What is it you want to learn?" "Love." He hesitated, then whispered, "The piano." Her hand stopped moving. A shadow crossed her face, not from disapproval, but from the weight of reality. "Oh, Adrian." She reached over and touched his cheek. "If I could buy you one, I would. But we don't have the money for lessons, let alone the instrument." "I'm sorry." He nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. A week later, fate gave Adrian his first tiny step forward. In the back of the school auditorium stood an old, upright piano, scratched, dusty, some keys sticking. It was used only for choir practice. One afternoon, when most kids had gone home, Adrian slipped inside. He pressed one key. The sound was dull but warm. He pressed another, and another, and before he knew it, he was experimenting. High notes like birdsong, low notes like distant thunder. That became his secret. Every day after school, before walking the long road home, he would sneak into the auditorium for 10 or 15 minutes, teaching himself which keys made which sounds. He had no teacher, no sheet music, no idea of technique, but his ears became his guide. The janitor, Mr. Whitman, eventually caught him. Adrian froze, waiting to be yelled at. But the old man just scratched his chin. "You like the piano, kid?" "Yes, sir," Adrian whispered. "Well, I can't have you breaking it," Mr. Whitman said. "But if you promise to be careful, I suppose I can let you stay after school sometimes. Just don't tell anyone." It was the closest thing to a blessing Adrian had ever received. At home, life stayed the same. Early mornings, farm chores, endless work. But now there was something different in Adrian's days, a spark that kept him going. Even when Ryan and the others called him names, even when his hands were blistered from helping his father in the fields, he carried the sound of the piano in his mind. One night, lying in bed, he whispered into the dark, "One day, I'll play on a real stage, and people will listen, and they'll know I'm more than what they see." The wind rattled the window, as if the world was answering. That was the beginning. The road ahead would be harder than anything Adrian had faced, full of obstacles, heartbreak, and choices that would test how much he truly believed in himself. But for now, all he had was an old piano, a few stolen minutes a day, and a dream that refused to die. Adrian's secret piano sessions became the brightest part of his week. The sound of the old upright filled the empty school auditorium with life, and for those stolen minutes each day, he wasn't the poor farm boy or piano boy. He was a musician. He didn't know the names of chords or the difference between sharps and flats. He only knew how the notes felt. When two keys made a sound that seemed wrong, he tried again until it felt right. Sometimes, he would hum a melody he'd heard on the radio and try to match it on the keys. His progress was slow, but it was progress. Mr. Whitman, the janitor, began lingering in the doorway, listening. "You've got a good ear, kid," he said one afternoon. "But you're missing some basics." Adrian looked up hopefully. "Do you know how to play?" Mr. Whitman chuckled. "Enough to keep you from picking up bad habits. My wife used to play. She taught me a few things before she passed. If you like, I can show you how to sit properly. Use your fingers right." That was the first time Adrian received anything close to a lesson. It wasn't much, just a few tips on posture and hand shape, but it made the keys feel different under his fingers. He practiced them over and over, hungry for improvement. Still, there were days when his dream felt far away. At school, the bullying continued. Ryan and his friends made piano jokes whenever they saw him. Sometimes they'd block the hallway, shoving him back and forth like he was invisible to the teachers. One rainy afternoon, Ryan cornered him by the lockers. "So, piano boy, when's your big concert?" "Oh wait, never. You'll be stuck on that farm forever." Adrian wanted to yell back, to tell Ryan that he would play on stage one day. But he remembered his mother's words, "Choose when to speak, and when to let silence be stronger." So he just walked away. But inside, the insult turned into fuel. That winter, Adrian's father came home one night with a small surprise. An old keyboard, battered and missing two keys. A neighbor had been cleaning out his attic and offered it for free. "It's not much," his father said, placing it on the kitchen table, "but it works. Thought you might like it." Adrian's hands shook as he plugged it in. The sound wasn't as rich as the upright piano at school, but it was his. For the first time, he could practice at home. From that day, he spent every free moment with the keyboard. Morning before school, late evening after chores, even during breaks in the barn while his parents worked. He played until his fingertips hurt, pushing himself to remember patterns and melodies. By the time spring arrived, he could play a few simple songs by ear. Mr. Whitman noticed. "You're improving fast," the janitor said one afternoon. "Ever thought about performing at the school talent show?" Adrian froze. "Me? No, I'm not good enough." "You're better than you think," Whitman replied. "Besides, talent shows aren't just about winning. They're about showing the world what you've got." The idea terrified him, but it also sparked something in his chest. If he could play in front of the whole school, even Ryan, maybe they would see him differently. He practiced in secret for weeks, choosing a song he loved, a gentle, flowing piece he had learned entirely by ear. He didn't tell his parents, afraid they might worry he'd be embarrassed. When the day came, he walked onto the stage with shaking hands. The old auditorium piano loomed in front of him. The lights were hot, the audience loud. Somewhere in the crowd, Ryan was smirking. Adrian sat down, took a deep breath, and pressed the first key. The sound filled the room. The chatter faded. His hands began to move, remembering every practice session, every stolen minute in the empty hall. The music grew, warm and steady, weaving its way through the audience. When the last note faded, there was a moment of silence, and then applause. Real applause. Adrian stood, his face hot, unsure if he should bow. He caught a glimpse of Ryan, whose smirk had been replaced by something unreadable. After the show, a few classmates came up to him. "Hey, that was really good," one said. "Did you make that up yourself?" asked another. Adrian shook his head, too shy to take in the praise, but inside, he felt lighter. It wasn't victory. It wasn't a stage in a grand concert hall, but it was proof that he could stand in front of people and play. A few weeks later, Adrian found a flyer in the school office. Youth music workshop, free for selected students. It was a one-week summer program run by a local arts charity, offering classes with real musicians. "You should apply," Mr. Whitman told him. "You've got nothing to lose." Adrian filled out the form, pouring his heart into the section asking why he wanted to attend. He wrote about the first time he'd heard the piano, about practicing on the old upright and broken keyboard, about his dream of playing on a real stage. Weeks passed. He tried not to think about it. Then, one hot afternoon in June, a letter arrived. He'd been accepted. The workshop was in the nearby city, the biggest place Adrian had ever been. His parents scraped together enough for the bus fare and packed him a lunch for each day. The first morning, he walked into a bright music hall filled with pianos, violins, guitars, and students who seemed to know so much more than he did. At first, he felt out of place, but when he sat down at one of the shiny black pianos and began to play his piece, heads turned. The instructor, a tall man with silver hair, smiled. "Self-taught?" "Yes, sir," Adrian replied nervously. The man nodded. "You've got talent, and more importantly, you've got heart. Let's see what we can do with that." By the end of the week, Adrian had learned proper fingering, scales, and his first real sheet music. It was overwhelming, but thrilling. On the last day, the students performed for their families. His parents sat in the front row, their work-worn hands folded together, eyes shining with pride. When Adrian finished his song, his mother wiped a tear from her cheek. His father clapped louder than anyone else. For the first time, Adrian thought, maybe this isn't just a dream. Maybe this is my life. But dreams, he would soon learn, don't grow without challenges. And the next one was already on its way. Summer thinned into the kind of autumn that turns fields the color of brass. Adrian returned from the youth workshop buzzing with new knowledge and the kind of hope that makes chores feel lighter. He woke earlier, finished the milking faster, and raced the son to the kitchen table where the battered keyboard sat like a promise. 2 weeks later, the keyboard died. It didn't go quietly. First the high E began to hiss, then 2 middle keys stuck, then the whole thing flickered and let out a sound like a sigh. Adrian unplugged it and plugged it back in, pressed all the buttons he knew, whispered please into the plastic. Nothing! He swallowed hard and told his parents at dinner. His father's face folded with sympathy. His mother reached for his hand. We'll figure something out, she said. But everyone at the table knew something meant time, and time meant money they didn't have. At school, the auditorium piano was suddenly always in use. Choir rehearsals, assemblies, a drama club that discovered it needed underscoring for a play about a detective who never solved anything. Some days Adrian could sneak in for 5 minutes. Other days the door stayed locked. You look like you lost your best friend, Mr. Whitman said, finding him staring at the closed door. I think I did, Adrian said. The janitor scratched his cheek. Give me 2 days. 2 days later, he pressed a key into Adrian's palm, the kind that opened the side door to the auditorium. For after hours, he murmured, careful how you use it. Adrian's throat tightened. Why are you helping me? Mr. Whitman shrugged. Because once, a teacher let me sit alone in a woodshop after hours until I built the cabinet I've been seeing in my head. Because someone has to hand out keys. That night, Adrian played until the school's old heating system clanked awake and the clock near the stage coughed itself to midnight. He left the room in perfect order, locked the door, and walked home through air so cold it felt like clean water. With access came urgency. He set goals, scales every day, 2 pages of sheet music without looking down, 1 hour on phrasing, 10 minutes to just improvise and remember why he started. He practiced until the pads of his fingers felt like sanded wood. When he stumbled, he wrote the trouble spot on a sticky note and attacked it like a math problem. But life was more than music. On the farm, a spring snapped in the milking rig and his father spent 3 evenings fixing it by lamplight. His mother's back ached, but she never said so. Adrian tried to shoulder more of the work, which meant arriving at the auditorium exhausted, hands raw, eyes gritty. Some nights he fell asleep on the piano bench, forehead on his forearms, a chord still ringing quietly under his cheek. At school, Ryan kept to his old game. How's the big career going? He'd bark in the corridor. Sign any record deals with your toy piano? When Adrian didn't rise to it, the bullying turned sly. A missing homework sheet, a shoulder in the hallway a little too hard. One afternoon, a phone thrust in his face while he practiced. Play something. I need a laugh. When he didn't, they posted anyway. Farmer boy thinks he's Beethoven. It stung. He learned to let the sting pass through him like cold air. In late October, a letter arrived with Professor Lawrence's neat signature at the bottom. I've recommended you to a colleague of mine, it read. Her name is Mara Alvarez. She teaches in the city. She's hard on her students and softer on no one, but she will see you. Saturday, 10 a.m. Bring what you've learned and what you love. If you cannot afford her rate, be honest. She values honesty. Adrian reread the letter until the paper warmed in his hands. His parents read it too, exchanging a look that was half pride, half worry. I can take the early bus, Adrian said quickly, and come back by evening. I'll do the morning chores Friday night and the evening chores Sunday morning. I can pay for the fare with weekend shifts at the feed store." They agreed. In that careful way parents agree to a dream, because to refuse would hurt more than to stretch. The city felt larger in October. Stripped trees, quick clouds, wind that slapped and ran. The building where Ms. Alvarez taught sat above a bakery. The stairs smelled like sugar and old varnish. She was nothing like any teacher he had met. Her hair was shot through with silver. Her eyes were the kind that took in details and turned them into decisions. She listened to him play. Scales first, then a simple Clementi sonatina, then the piece he loved most, which didn't have a proper name because he'd learned it by ear and rebuilt it from memory. When he finished, she didn't praise or scold. She asked him to play the last 8 bars again, slower. Then again, even slower. She reached over once to adjust his wrist with a touch as precise as a laser. "You have a good ear," she said at last. "And what you don't have, you were building. Technique is a road you're already walking. But you rush, not because you want to show off, because you want to arrive. Music is not a place you arrive. It is the road." Yes," Adrian said, though some part of him wanted to defend the impatience that had gotten him this far. She named a rate that made his heart sink. "We can't," he began. "I didn't ask if you could pay it," she said. "I told you the rate. Now I will tell you the arrangement I'm offering you." She slid a small card across the piano. "You will come twice a month. You will pay me 1/3 of my rate. In return, you will sweep my studio at the end of each lesson. You will help me catalog my scores, and you will be my page turner in 2 recitals this year if asked. If you are late, the deal ends. If you arrive unprepared twice, the deal ends. If you stop listening, the deal ends. Do you agree?" He nodded so hard his hair fell into his eyes. "Yes, I agree." She held up a finger. "One more rule. You will enter your school's winter competition." "I don't think they would even enter," she said. "What happens after that is not your business until it happens." The winter competition was held in a gymnasium draped with blue fabric to make it pretend to be a theater. Adrian registered online in the school library, hands sweating onto the keyboard. He chose 2 pieces, a Bach prelude he had learned in careful layers, and a small, aching piece by Satie that felt like what the fields looked like at dusk. He practiced until the library's heater rattled and the glass in the trophy case fought with his breath. Ms. Alvarez deconstructed his hands and put them back together, shaved his speeds, sanded his dynamics, made him hold the ends of notes until they stopped trying to escape. On the day of the competition, he wore his best shirt and shoes that had seen better days. His parents sat halfway back, his mother's hands folded so tightly her knuckles paled. Mr. Whitman stood in the aisle because he didn't trust the folding chairs. Adrian walked to the piano to a polite sprinkling of applause. Ryan was somewhere in the audience. Adrian could feel him like a splinter, and so were teachers who had never learned his name because it wasn't on any varsity list. He placed his hands. He breathed. The Bach began. 2 bars in, his left hand grazed a black key it shouldn't. The mistake was small and quick and felt like a dropped bead rolling under furniture. He wanted to chase it. Instead, he let it go and found the pulse again. The prelude gathered itself and moved forward as if nothing had happened. The Satie afterward was a kind of healing, a simple line that trusted him as much as he trusted it. When he finished, the applause felt warmer than polite. He stood, bowed the way Ms. Alvarez had taught him, gratitude without apology, and walked off. In the hallway, he leaned his head against the wall until the world steadied. "You did it," Mr. Whitman said, somehow there already, a paper cup of water in his hand. "You did it honest. The winners were announced after a long intermission where the blue fabric shivered in the gym's draft. Adrian didn't place. He didn't expect to. The first prize went to a girl who played a Chopin waltz like she was breathing silver. The honorable mentions were called, and his name was not among them. For a moment, disappointment pressed the space just behind his eyes. Then he turned to his parents, who were standing and clapping like people clap at weddings. On Monday, Ryan passed him in the corridor and smirked. "Saw you almost crash," he said. "Maybe stick to the farm?" "Maybe," Adrian said, and walked on. He didn't know it then, but that calm refusal to feed the noise would be the muscle he used most often. January on the farm was a ledger of small hardships. Pipes that froze and needed coaxing back to life, a sick calf that kept everyone up 2 nights in a row, a tractor that decided to sulk exactly when it was needed. Money tightened like a belt another notch. One morning, his father slipped on a patch of ice in the yard and caught himself badly. A deep bruise flowered under his jacket, and the doctor told him to lift less for a week. Less lifting on a farm is a math problem with no right answer. Adrian filled the gap without being asked. Practice time shrank. He carried music in his head while he stacked bales. He tapped rhythms on fence posts, sang scales into his scarf, moved his fingers over the quilt at night. On Saturdays, he still took the bus to the city, sat under Ms. Alvarez's gaze, and proved he had moved the work forward even when life tried to steal his hours. One afternoon, she said, "You need a real instrument at home." He laughed, the sound landing somewhere between gratitude and grief. "We can't." She did not press. She made a note instead. 2 weeks later, she asked him to stay after and move some boxes. When they'd finished, she handed him a folded newspaper clipping. "Retired teacher seeks home for upright piano. Good condition. Will donate to serious student. Must pick up. I can't promise it will still be there," she said. These notices vanished quickly, but call today. Adrian's hands shook dialing the number on the studio's old phone. An elderly voice answered, warm and crackling. "Oh, my dear, yes. It's my Agnes," the woman said, as if the piano were someone who needed proper goodbyes. "She's been with me for 40 years. She needs to be played. Can you come tomorrow? Bring strong people." Strong people in the Cole family meant neighbors with trucks and ropes and a shared understanding that sometimes the work you do for others is the work you'll one day need done for you. On Sunday, 2 trucks and 4 men navigated the narrow lane to the woman's house. She was waiting in a cardigan the color of cornflowers, her living room full of framed photographs, the piano against a wall where the wallpaper had faded around it like a picture frame. Adrian touched the keys. They were cool and steady. The sound was out of tune but honest. "You'll take care of her?" the woman asked. "Yes," Adrian said, and meant the piano and more than the piano. They wrestled Agnes. She had a name now. Her name was Agnes, into the Cole farmhouse and set her against the kitchen wall where the morning light would find her. A neighbor who had tuned pianos in his youth brought a toolkit the next day and tuned until the whole room felt taller. Adrian played until the bread burned in the oven, until dusk folded itself into the corners, until his mother fell asleep at the table with a book open in her hands. Spring brought 2 letters. The first was from a regional arts council. "We invite you to audition for a youth performance scholarship. 2 pieces, 1 classical, 1 of your choice. Auditions April 18th, City Hall. Travel stipend available upon approval." The second was from his own school. "You have been selected to perform at the Spring Academic Showcase." Someone had slipped his name into the program beside the robotics club and the debate team. For the scholarship, Ms. Alvarez suggested a Haydn movement, clear, witty, merciless if you try to cheat, and told him the piece of your choice should be something that wasn't already someone else's words. "Write it," she said. You don't need paper yet. Build it at the piano. Give it a spine, then add ribs. He went home and wrote at Agnes. He wrote the way the fields looked after rain, the way his father laughed even when the numbers didn't, the way his mother's hands never seemed to stop moving. He wrote Mr. Whitman's key and the creak of the auditorium door and the particular sting of being laughed at and the equal relief of playing anyway. He didn't write Ryan, not directly, but he wrote the place where Ryan's voice went quiet in his head. He called the piece Harvest Nocturne because it sounded like night opening in a field. For the showcase, he chose the Satie because schools need reminding that simplicity can be a kind of bravery. The night of the showcase, the gym's blue fabric tried again to be a theater. Parents clapped for robots lifting boxes. They clapped for speeches about policy reform. When Adrian's turn came, he sat at the rolling keyboard the school used for assemblies and found the Satie's first note like the edge of a familiar path. He didn't see Ryan until afterward. The other boys stood by the exit, hands in his pockets, eyes skittering like water over stone. That wasn't bad, he muttered, as if the words were a currency he wasn't sure how to spend. Thanks, Adrian said. He meant it. Ryan shrugged, then glanced away. Look, my sister. She has trouble sleeping. Could you, I dunno, record something for her? He looked like he wanted to swallow the question back down. Adrian blinked. Sure, he said. Give me a week. On the bus home, he sat with the strange warmth of it. How even small apologies can change the temperature of a life. The morning of the scholarship audition, sky and ground agreed on the color gray. Halfway to the city, the bus stopped and stayed stopped. A truck had jackknifed across the highway, and all the cars became a single, frustrated animal. Adrian stood in the aisle, checking the time every 30 seconds, trying not to watch the hours gnaw at his chance. Finally, the bus driver, a woman who wore her authority like a useful jacket, announced that anyone who needed the next town could get off and walk along the service road. He ran. By the time he reached City Hall, his lungs were burning and his shirt stuck damp to his back. The woman at the desk looked up with a face that did not want to say the thing it had to say. We're about to close, she said. You're cold. Yes, he panted. She hesitated. Somewhere behind her, a door opened and a man peered out, hair wild in a way that looked deliberate. This the runner? He asked. At her nod, he waved Adrian in. 2 pieces. No time to be nervous. Adrian's heart wanted to be both a snare drum and a trapped bird. He sat anyway. He let the Haydn clean his pulse. He let Harvest Nocturne begin with the exact grace of a gate on a well-oiled hinge. When he finished, the room was quiet in the way rooms are quiet when people are measuring temptation against permission. The wild-haired man scribbled something, then looked up. Who taught you? He asked. Many people, Adrian said, and listed them in his head like a prayer. A janitor, a teacher who believed in keys and rules, a woman who loved the piano enough to give it away, a mother and father who let their son risk a future they could not pay for, a teacher who made roads out of scales. We'll be in touch, the man said, which is the sentence people say when they could mean anything. On the bus home, exhaustion fell over him like a blanket that smelled like rain. He pressed his forehead to the window and watched the fields unspool. When he reached the farm, his father was in the yard with his jacket over his good shoulder, fixing a gate. How did it go? He called. I did what I could, Adrian said. That's all the world ever asks, his father said, no matter what it pretends. A week passed. He recorded the lullaby for Ryan's sister on Agnes, the melody simple as a hand resting on a shoulder. He left the file in an envelope in Ryan's locker because handing it over felt like forcing something that should be light. The next morning there was a note back. She fell asleep before the second verse. Thanks. The paper smelled faintly of shampoo. The world shifted a degree toward kindness. Then the letter arrived. Not an email, an envelope with his name on it in a handwriting that tidied all the way to the stamp. Inside, we are pleased to award you a regional scholarship covering 1 year of lessons and a travel stipend for competitions and auditions. Please present this letter to your instructor. We look forward to hearing more from you. More from you. He read those 3 words twice, then a third time, until they landed as something he was allowed to believe. He biked into town to show Mr. Whitman first. The old man read the letter twice and then put on his glasses and read it again, as if wearing them might reveal more good hidden in the ink. You did it, Mr. Whitman said, voice rough. Now don't let it make you smaller. How would it make me smaller? Adrian asked, half laughing. Success turns some people into polite furniture, the janitor said. You're not furniture. He took the letter to Ms. Alvarez next. She scanned it, nodded once as if the world had finally agreed with a verdict she'd reached already, and changed nothing about the work. She added a page of scales. She circled a bar in the height and said, This still lies to me. Make it tell the truth. Spring cracked open into a summer that moved too fast. With the stipend, Ms. Alvarez entered him in a small festival recital on the lawn of the City Museum. He played under trees while children chased bubbles across the grass and old women in sun hats clapped with the delicacy of birds. He learned what it felt like to fold a mistake into a phrase so that it became a kind of grace. He also learned what it felt like to play for people who didn't expect to hear themselves in the music and then did. A man in a mechanic's shirt shook his hand afterward and said, My boy's got hands like yours, dirty most days, strong. He thinks music is for other people. Maybe I'll bring him next time. Adrian went home and wrote another page of Harvest Nocturne. That sounded like grease under fingernails and pride in a job done completely. He played at church when Mrs. Bennett, the organist, went to visit her sister. The hymns were like old rivers, broad, generous, forgiving. He played at the feed store's anniversary party while toddlers danced on sticky floors. He played for a group of veterans at the library, his left hand steady as a promise. The practice room he loved most remained the kitchen, with Agnes under the window and his mother humming while she made soup. Sometimes his father came in and leaned in the doorway, eyes half closed, as if the music had a shape he could lean against. At night, Adrian lay in bed and imagined the thing he hadn't dared put shape to yet. A hall unfamiliar to him but friendly to sound, a grand piano with a lid like a black wing, 200 people breathing in the same room for the same reason. He let himself want it out loud. He let the wanting make him kinder and not harder. The call came in August, heat pressing the phone to his cheek. This is Dr. Sato from the Conservatory, the woman said in a voice that sounded like a clear path through a crowded station. We've heard about you from several directions. We have a scholarship audition in 3 weeks for late candidates. 2 pieces, 1 classical, 1 original. If you pass, you begin in September. Can you come? Adrian's heart did that terrible and beautiful thing where it leapt before it looked. Yes, he said, I can come. He hung up and stood very still in the kitchen, the room humming with summer insects and the memory of soup and the soft tick of the clock. Then he ran to the field where his parents were checking fences and waved his arms like a windmill. His mother sat on the fence post and cried quietly in the way of people who have had to ration this kind of crying. His father hugged him with his good shoulder and then with the other on principle. 3 weeks, his father said. We can do 3 weeks. They did 3 weeks like people who knew the measure of time. Adrian practiced like a man building a bridge. Ms. Alvarez became a metronome and a map maker. altering his phrasing like a surgeon and reminding him to breathe like a friend. Mr. Whitman oiled the auditorium's door so it wouldn't squeak when Adrian sneaked in late. Ryan nodded at him in hallways and once left a folded program from a city recital in his locker with 2 bars circled and the words "this part stayed in my head" scribbled beside them. On the night before the audition, the sky cracked open and a storm came down like a decision. The road to the city flooded at the river bend where it always did. The bus route closed. For 5 long minutes, the kitchen was a fist. "I'll drive you," Mr. Whitman said on the phone when they called. "Old high road. It'll be ugly, but it'll hold." They left at dawn in a pickup that rattled like a kettle drum and smelled faintly of sawdust. The high road was a ribbon of stubborn tarmac that cut through hills so steep the trees clung with both hands. Twice they had to stop while a small herd of sheep realized collectively that movement would help. Near the top of the last rise, the truck coughed and made a sound like a smoker laughing. It lurched, then died. Mr. Whitman coaxed it, pleaded, cursed in a language that wasn't words, then put his forehead on the steering wheel and breathed. "I can run it," Adrian said. "It's 10 kilometers, Mr. Whitman said without looking up. "In good weather." "I can run it," Adrian said again, remembering the service road, the way the city hall doors had looked when they opened at the last second. Mr. Whitman lifted his head. He looked like a man who had arrived at a decision he was going to hate and make anyway. "Take the map out of the glove box," he said. "Cut through the old quarry path. When you hit the road again, thumb a ride. The conservatory is 2 rights and a left from the fountain with a fish that looks like it regrets everything." He pressed the truck's key into Adrian's hand. For luck, Adrian ran. He ran until his legs felt like arguments he was too tired to win and his lungs wanted to be oceans. A delivery van stopped because the driver had a face like a father. Adrian climbed in and said thank you so many times the man laughed. He arrived with 10 minutes to spare, hair damp, shoes muddy, heart beating a tempo no metronome would approve. In the quiet before he played, he thought about every room that had held his sound. A locked auditorium, a kitchen, a church, a lawn, a library. He thought about Agnes and about a piano that still sat in a blue-draped gym. He thought about the farm and the flood and the high road and a map that used words like fish and regret to get him here. He placed his hands. The Bach he chose for this day was a different river than the one he'd played in winter. It asked him to step carefully and then to trust the current. He did both. Harvest Nocturne followed, and in its middle he inserted 4 new bars he had written the night before, because sometimes the heart insists. When he finished, the room didn't applaud. Audition rooms don't, but something in the air untensed. "Thank you, Adrian," Dr. Sato said, and her voice felt like shade. "Wait outside, please." He waited in a hallway that smelled like lemon polish and anxiety. He watched other students go in and come out with eyes that were either too bright or very calm. He thought about the truck on the high road and Mr. Whitman's face when he handed over the key. The door opened. A different man stepped out, tall, thin, hair like surprise. "Mr. Cole," he said, "welcome to the conservatory. Assuming you would like the full scholarship we are offering you." For a second, the words meant nothing. Then they meant everything at once. Adrian nodded because nodding seemed safer than speaking. "I would," he managed. "Good," the man said mildly, as if discussing weather. "Term begins in 12 days. Bring your hands, and whatever it is that put that night air into your nocturne." Adrian walked out into a city that felt suddenly like a song he had been practicing in his sleep for years. He called his parents. He called Ms. Alvarez. He called Mr. Whitman, who answered on the first ring and shouted like a man whose truck had finally decided to live. He sat on the fountain with the regretful fish and let his pulse climb down a few stairs. He closed his eyes and saw, not a finish line, but a door opening onto a longer, steeper, brighter road. The 12 days between Adrian's acceptance and the start of the term at the conservatory felt like 12 different lifetimes. Every morning, he woke with a new thought. This is real. Every night, he went to bed with another. I have to be ready. Life on the farm didn't pause for his dreams. He still woke before dawn to feed the animals, still helped his father repair fences, still hauled buckets of water. But between every chore, he found time to practice. Agnes's keys felt different now, heavier, almost like they knew the weight of what was coming. Ms. Alvarez drilled him harder than ever. You are not here to prove you deserve the place, she told him one afternoon. You are here to use it, and to use it, you must arrive already in motion. Even Mr. Whitman came by one evening, sitting quietly at the kitchen table while Adrian played through the Bach and Harvest Nocturne. When Adrian finished, the janitor cleared his throat. Doesn't sound like the kid I caught sneaking into the auditorium anymore, he said. Sounds like someone people might pay to hear. Adrian smiled. Someday, maybe, not someday, Whitman said. Soon. A new world. The conservatory's main building was nothing like the schools Adrian knew. It had wide marble staircases, rehearsal halls with walls of warm wood, and practice rooms lined with soundproof glass. Everywhere, music spilled into the air. Scales, arpeggios, fragments of concertos. The other students were talented in ways that startled him. Some had been playing since they were 3, coached by famous teachers. Others spoke casually about summer programs in Vienna or Paris. Adrian felt out of place, wearing the same 2 good shirts and carrying a folder instead of a leather-bound score case. But when he played in his first class, the room went quiet in that same way it had in City Hall. His Bach was clean, his Nocturne alive. The professor, a tall man named Dr. Harland, raised an eyebrow. Self-taught for most of it? Yes, sir, Adrian said. Harland nodded once. Then let's see what happens when we polish the stone. The first weeks were brutal. His schedule was packed with theory classes, technique drills, ensemble rehearsals, and individual lessons. There were days when his hands ached so badly he could barely lift his fork at dinner. There were nights when the dorm room walls closed in and homesickness crept under the door. He called his parents every Sunday, telling them about the pieces he was learning, the friends he was slowly making. His mother always ended the call with, "We're proud of you." His father always added, "Play something for us when you come home." The announcement midway through the term, Dr. Harland gathered his class. "We're holding our winter showcase in 2 months," he said. "Each of you will perform 1 piece before a public audience. Friends, family, strangers. It's your chance to show what you've been building." The thought of playing in front of strangers didn't scare Adrian the way it once had, but this would be different. This was the conservatory. Mistakes would echo here. He decided to perform both the Haydn movement and Harvest Nocturne. The first would show precision, the second would show his own voice. Practice and pressure the weeks that followed were a blur of music. He practiced until the practice rooms blurred into each other, until the sound of the keys followed him into his dreams. He adjusted dynamics, reworked phrasing, and played the final bars of his Nocturne until he could feel them in his bones. Letters from home reminded him why he was here. His parents sent small notes about the farm, the calf that had been born healthy, the storm that had knocked out power for a day. Mr. Whitman wrote once, simply, "Still got your key. Keep going." The night of the showcase, the hall was already buzzing when Adrian arrived backstage. Rows of velvet seats stretched out under golden lights. The air smelled faintly of polished wood in anticipation. From the wings, He could see the audience filtering in, fellow students, professors, townspeople, and near the back, three familiar figures, his parents and Mr. Whitman, sitting together. His mother clutched her hands in her lap. His father sat forward as if ready to catch him. And Whitman had the look of a man who knew the ending but wanted to hear the story anyway. His name was called. He walked to the grand piano. Its lid opened like a black wing. The room seemed to exhale as he sat, placed his hands, and began. The Haydn was crisp, playful, alive. Every trill landed, every pause breathed. The nocturne followed, deeper, more personal. It carried the smell of rain on fields, the warmth of a kitchen in winter, the steady patience of people who work the land. In the middle, he let the notes swell until it felt like the whole room was leaning in. When the last chord faded, there was a heartbeat of silence, then applause that rose like a wave. He stood, bowed, and for a moment caught his mother's teary smile, his father's proud nod, and Mr. Whitman's slow, deliberate clap. After the curtain backstage, Dr. Harlan clapped him on the shoulder. "That nocturne," he said. "It's yours, isn't it?" "Yes, sir." "Keep writing," Harlan said. "The world has enough people who can play well. It needs more who can say something worth hearing." His parents met him in the lobby, wrapping him in hugs. Mr. Whitman just handed him a small box. Inside was the old brass key to the school auditorium. "Don't forget where you started," Whitman said. "I won't," Adrian promised. Full circle months later, during spring break, Adrian returned to his old school. The auditorium was still the same. Dusty curtains, creaky floorboards, the upright piano standing patiently at the back. He invited the current students in for an afternoon. Some were shy, some curious. Among them was a boy who kept his head down but whose eyes lit up when Adrian played. When the session ended, the boy lingered. "Do you think someone like me could learn?" he asked quietly. Adrian smiled. "Someone like you? Absolutely. Here, let me show you a key." And in that moment, with the sound of the first note ringing in the air, Adrian knew his dream had grown larger than the stage. It was about giving someone else that first spark, the way others had given it to him. He never stopped playing, never stopped writing, never stopped remembering the farm, the storms, the locked doors, and the ones that opened. Because he'd learned something worth more than any award. Talent opens a door, but belief and the people who hand you the right key keep it open.